So if we move on to another side, because this is something also very interesting,
Mhm.
you cycle in and out of ketosis doing ketogenic diets. So what is the purpose of this and why do you do it?
Yeah. So I guess just to give a brief overview of the ketogenic diet, it's not really brand new. It kind of goes off of the work of Dr. Atkins, who created the Atkins diet in the 60s, I believe. But essentially, so the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right?
Yes.
Our body, the main fuel substrate or the main source of energy for our body is glucose. It's sugar. So essentially, what the ketogenic diet does is by reducing carbohydrates to a very low level, somewhere between 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates a day, your body will then naturally shift into what's called ketosis, which is a state of fatty acid oxidation, or essentially, instead of using glucose to make ATP and energy, they use fatty acids, which make ketones, which your body can then use for energy. So, in terms of why that's beneficial, one, at least in terms of why it's now commercially popular in the mainstream, is it's incredibly effective for fat loss. Speaking anecdotally, it's by far the diet that I lost the most weight on in the first month to 3 months. I think overall, I lost about 10 to 15 pounds just on that diet. And then other than that, there's other literature out there. It's spoken about Dr. Peter Attia, Dr. Andrew Huberman. There's also a lot of ketogenic doctor influencers out there, but mental clarity is a big one. So when you eat the SAD or the standard American diet, which can be quite high in processed food, carbohydrates, simple sugars, so you eat the chocolate bar, right? There's now sugar in your blood. It's not good for your organs. So your body's like, okay, insulin goes up. So what insulin does, it's a hormone. It takes the blood sugar and shoves it into liver cells, muscle cells, etc. So it's not in your blood. Now, when the insulin goes up, your sugar goes away. There's now less sugar in your blood than you initially had when you were baseline. So you're functionally hypoglycemic. And the symptoms of hypoglycemia are things like brain fog, tiredness. So that really explains the post-lunch kind of hangover that you get if you have a really big
Oh,
lunch.
the food coma.
Exactly, the
Yeah.
the food coma. It's because your body literally had to deal with all this sugar in your blood. It took too much out, and now you don't really have enough, not in terms of like functionality, but in terms of like how you feel. So mentally, you're a bit foggy, you're a bit drained, you're a bit tired. When you're on the ketogenic diet, your insulin's like this. It's much more baseline, which means the amount of, blood glucose is quite stable, and therefore how you feel is actually a lot better as well. Not to mention that right now, one of the only clinical indications of the ketogenic diet is pediatric seizures.
Mhm.
So when there's, small kids that constantly have epileptic fits or things like that, and they're refractory or they're not responsive to a lot of the medications that are being used, being put on a ketogenic diet stops that. In fact, there's quite a profound effect. Sometimes it can stop seizures altogether.
Mhm.
And there, or at least the current literature indicates it's because our brain preferentially uses ketones for fuel compared to sugar. So
Mhm.
there's something about like there's more efficient neuron to neuron communication when you're on ketosis. There's Swedish memory champions that switch onto ketogenic diets before they start. Me personally, I was ketogenic when I took my board exams. So there's something to be said about the mental clarity that comes in with having stable blood sugar. And I think using ketones is a main fuel source. In terms of why I cycle in and out of it, that is a different conversation altogether. And I think one of the main downfalls of the ketogenic diet is that it's very hard to sustain, actually.
Yeah.
It's quite strict. So if I'm only eating 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, that means my diet is mostly composed of meat and then essentially rice alternate. We're in the Philippines, right? So rice is almost
A
ubiquitous in
staple.
exactly. It's a staple. So um, half the battle of keto is finding alternatives that you don't hate. So for
Mhm.
me, that's things like shirataki rice, which is essentially cognac noodles, which is like 99% fiber or 99% water, 1% fiber, cauliflower rice, cruciferous vegetables that aren't high in starch. And while I can do that at home, and I'm very lucky that I have supportive parents who are who are willing to help me cook these things and, source the ingredients. When I go out for a meal with friends, it's hard to be that guy that always orders the burger, then removes the bun, or like has to ask the waiter or waitress or server, is there sugar in this? So there's also very real world difficulties of sustaining it for a long period of time. But I think there's promising work on it. I'm not comfortable, prescribing it to people that I haven't seen. I would deal with patients one-on-one and take their blood work pre, post, during, etc. if I could have a close monitor of them. But yeah, I think there's good work on it. For anyone that's interested, I strongly suggest you read the literature out there. There's really good work on it. Dr. Peter Attia speaks on it quite well. There's Dr. Berg, who's an interventional cardiologist, also speaks on it quite well. And yeah, it's a part of science that I think I'm very excited to see how it develops. Nutrition science in general, right? We kind of suck at it as a human population. So I'm just happy to be making progress in some direction. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there is that stigma that is attached to ketogenic diets that, it's dangerous because it focuses, well, people assume that it focuses on having high fat, but actually it's low carb. And there is, well, apart from the weight loss, the other benefits, as you've described, is that mental clarity. It really is recommended, or at least recently, for brain and for the brain health. There's another one, Dr. Dale Bredesen, who works with patients with cognitive decline. He recommends ketogenic diets as well. And so if done correctly, as you mentioned, you'd prefer or very much see patients before doing or recommending a ketogenic diet with them, and that these have to be guided and monitored using like keto monitors and to check if you're actually achieving ketosis on a regular basis. So what are the common pitfalls that people do if they try it on their own, and how can people kind of do it safely?
Okay. So the common pitfalls, I think right now, just as someone that's been doing the ketogenic diet for a few years now, at least in the Philippine market. In the US and Europe, they're quite lucky because it's being commercialized now. So if you're craving a chocolate bar or like a burger, they sell it. They sell the cauliflower rice. They sell the milk cereal that is actually all, keto friendly. They sell the almond milk. They sell all the things that make it easier for you to adhere to this very difficult diet without feeling like some sort of social pariah, like you're just some weirdo that has to only eat meat and like cauliflower. So the pitfall is really just having the discipline, I guess, to really make your own meals most of the time when you're at home, and then being okay being that friend in the group that's like, oh, I can't eat here, or like, oh, okay, I have to order this, or I have to, remove this from my food, and kind of dealing with all the questions that people are going to ask as well. Because you're right, there is a very negative stigma around it. And I think one of the main things to speak of is that fat has been so maligned, I guess, in medicine and in popular culture as well. So the idea that, fat makes you fat, things like the cholesterol study that high cholesterol is linked to adverse cardiac outcomes, etc. So there's all of that stigma and misinformation that you have to deal with when you're a keto practitioner. And in terms of the health issues that it can cause, I think there was literature again. I think it came out of UC San Diego, but essentially there's some negative hyperresponders that when they're on the ketogenic diet, they can have a very large uptick in apolipoB, which is a component of cholesterol that is linked to atherogenic plaques, or the things that cause heart disease. So before just widely prescribing it to everyone or people on the internet who haven't seen, I would want to make sure that you're not one of those people. There's also genetic diseases like familial hypercholesterolemia, which is where you just, for some reason, have very high cholesterol levels, even when you're a kid. So, you want to rule that out as well. Other than that, there's the keto flu, which I think you may have heard of, it's a real thing. Luckily, I don't experience it anymore because I've been in and out of it quite a lot. But the first one, I'd say 1 to 1.5 weeks, you can feel kind of crappy. You just, you're essentially hypoglycemic. Your body's not shifted to making a lot of ketones yet. You just feel tired all the time. And, some people are in very high power jobs where they can't take that break or, don't want to go through that. But once you push through that barrier, there's a profound mental benefit or a mental clarity that I think a lot of people will notice, which is quite a positive benefit as well.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of things to consider, and definitely if you're looking to do a ketogenic diet, then make sure you consult your medical practitioner. I'm also curious to know, like personally, does it matter about the type of fats that you're eating? Like, can I eat chicharron, bacon, or like, because there's that, good fats, bad fats whole debate thing, especially like, should I be eating instead more like salmon, avocado, and things
Mhm.
like that? What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, so almost always, I will recommend that patients get their healthy fats from real food. So chicharron is, fine as a snack, but like I would much rather you have an avocado or fatty fish, like you mentioned, salmon, um, even like certain types of nuts, olive oils as well. I'd much rather a patient would eat that kind of food than go the bacon chicharron kind of route. There's nothing wrong with it,
Tasty, yummy.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
the good
it's
stuff.
yeah, of course, of course. Well, much like, anything else in life, if it tastes too good to be true, sometimes it is. So, I think the best or the healthiest way to do keto would be, yeah, the whole food, organic as much as possible route. And that's mainly just because processed food in general is quite bad for you. Things that have, trans fats, lots of preservatives, too much salt, um, are just, negative for your health. So if you can avoid it, get your fat mainly from healthy, natural sources that, you kind of cook yourself so that you know what's in it exactly.
Yeah, you know what's in it. That is the most important.
Yes, 100%.
Because yeah, especially nowadays, the packaging is so creative. You get the labels on them that says keto something, and it's technically unregulated, isn't it? You can just slap
Oh,
on keto onto it.
for sure. Peter Thea said this very well, actually. He said anything is ketogenic if you manage it. So like technically a Hershey's chocolate bar is ketogenic if I have a quarter of a square, right? Because keto just means that it's under a certain amount of, grams of carbohydrate. So when you look for food that's ketogenic, the main thing is, yeah, obviously one, look at the carbs, but two, look at the fat. So like the fat to carbohydrate ratio is really important as well. So you know that, okay, even if I, indulge in this food, how much can I eat before the carbs gets, dangerously high? Because it's everywhere now. Like even like ketchup. Ketchup has a lot of sugar, and people might not think about that intuitively, but it's there, and it can catch up on you if you put it on your fries or put it on your burger, etc. That's a lot of extra sugar you're getting without really being like, oh, I've had my chocolate lava cake today, or oh, I've had this and that. Milk tea is another huge one. Just speaking as someone who's very good colleagues love milk tea. It's massive. It's a massive source of sugar. So even before recommending someone go full-blown keto, I always recommend baby steps. My uncle has had huge benefits in this, and even just like cutting out sugar. So just start by, when you go to Starbucks, get the cold brew, get the Americano. Don't get the caramel macchiato, which is, one of my favorites, but like stay away from the added syrup, and then just like don't have dessert. The biggest one is carbonated beverages. I'm really lucky that my parents raised me in a very weird way where they drank Coke, but for some reason they would never allow me to do it. So yeah, so I never grew up.
Only for adults.
Yeah, exactly. It was something along those lines. Yeah, it's like for adults only. But yeah, carbonated beverages is a big one. So for anyone right now who's still trying to get onto the New Year's health trend, you don't have to cut your carbs down to 20 grams right now. I wouldn't even recommend that necessarily because you'd probably feel super bad and never want to do it again. I would start by saying, okay, if you drink soda a lot, only have it with one meal. After a few days, don't have soda. After a few days, cut down on your dessert. Don't have any desserts. And then from there, once you've accustomed to being like, oh, okay, I don't need all this sugar in my life, or I'm able to live in such a way that I don't crave it, then you can start making those adjustments to really fine tune. Do I want to go ketogenic? Do I want to go low carb, or even intermittent fasting and things like that? There's a lot of tools in our arsenal now, I think, that our parents didn't have. So that's also a really good benefit to being alive right now. And hopefully nutrition science keeps improving so that our kids and our grandkids will have all this correct information and different options to choose from, and that living a healthy life, it's super easy and not difficult at all. That's really the end game,
Yeah.
right? To make healthy eating easy. So yeah,
Yeah. So
hopefully we'll
we kind of cycled back to the beginning where we were talking about doing what you can at the moment and not kind of going cold turkey or feeling the pressure to have to do everything all at once. It's like do what you can right now, start small, build the habit, get used to it, and then eventually it becomes a system or a lifestyle.
Yep, 100%. Exactly.
So the last question of this interview, what is next for you?
So for me, the next thing will really be the US board exams. So I guess my professional interest is to do interventional cardiology. So that's essentially when someone has a heart attack. It's because there's a little cholesterol plaque stuck in one of their coronary arteries. So what I would want to be able to do is get a wire, essentially, put it through the radial artery and kind of poke it out so that your heart can get blood again. So in order to do that, I have to do 3 years of internal medicine residency, 3 years of cardiology residency, and then 1 year sub-fellowship in interventional cardiology. So I still have 7 more years at the minimum. But yeah, in terms of what's next for me, getting licensed in the US. My dream and my fiance's dream is to move back to New York. So it's really just studying for that, for the 3 board exams I have to take before applying to residency there. And then, yeah, I guess just continuing to live a healthy lifestyle as much as possible. And yeah, and I've research interests as well. I still have a project with that's looking at essentially teaching midwives how to do ultrasound in the rural areas so that there's a lower maternal mortality rate in the country. So thankfully, med school's out of the way and I can focus on these other things. But yeah, I'd still say I'm only 40% there. So still a ways to go.
Yeah, so sounds like there's still a long road ahead of, dreams and a vision and a plan that you want to strive to achieve. But throughout the interview, we've seen your strengths of having that perspective, the commitment, the self-regulation to be able to do a lot of amazing things. And so I wish you all the best. And thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure all the listeners and the viewers will pick up a lot of powerful information and insight.
Thanks so much also, Patty. This was a lot of fun. It's actually one of my first few interviews that I've done. So yeah, it's nice, and it's been incredible to watch you on this journey. I know that you were speaking to Charo about the marketing aspects of everything that you're doing and seeing your brand grow. So yeah, best of luck in the future. We have very similar interests in terms of health and nutrition. So of course, more opportunities to collaborate. And yeah, thank you to your viewers for listening, and best of luck with